Welcome to the Reporter Roundtable here on the Red River Farm Network. I'm Don Wick with Randy Coonan, Kara Hart, and Megan Overby. And it was a big news week. We've been all running around, a lot of things going on in the world of agriculture. Certainly today, we're all looking at the thermometer go up, looking at triple-digit temps, highs over 100 degrees for many today. Should be a record high for a lot of folks today and tomorrow. Certainly some impact, some influence on the crop. Randy, you've been out and about this week. What are you seeing as far as crop conditions?
Dry. And that's anybody you talk to, first thing they'll say is dry. On Crop Watch last week, we talked about a week ago, we were at least 70 degrees colder in places. We had some frost and freezes that did some damage in scattered areas, enough to cause some replanting of some soybeans. So we had that freezing temperatures coupled with the dry conditions, and it just did a number on these crops.
A lot of farmers were out replanting this week if they had some freeze damage maybe and trying to get that figured out at least before the heat comes in.
Yeah, not only that too, but I guess we had quite a bit of wind damage too in a few areas. So throw that in with the mix as well. And boy, this crop has not seen anything near ideal conditions this spring.
Well, that Leonard, North Dakota area is really at the heart of some of those freezing temperatures. A lot of folks was hit with it. But Megan, you were there yesterday?
Yes. So to, I guess, echo what Randy and Kara have both said, farmers are out replanting soybeans already, and specifically in that Leonard, North Dakota area. So NDON recorded a temperature of approximately 25 degrees Fahrenheit late last week for an extended amount of time. And I think that was key with the damage that we did see there. I'm hearing anywhere from 3 to 5 hours where that temperature dropped that low. And so I was out with Pioneer Strategic Account Manager Jeremy Baumgarten out in a plot of one of his retailers. And we took a firsthand look at that corn and soybean. With the corn, that should be okay. Most of this damage was on the field edges. And as we all know, that corn growing point was still below the ground. So that saved the corn. It's already starting to rebound for the most part. Soybeans, a really different case with the soybeans. He pointed out a specific plant where it looked like earlier over the weekend, early this week, that soybean plant was going to be okay. The cotyledons were starting to open, green up as a plant normally would, but then you could see where the emergence point out of the ground was starting to die off. So his biggest encouragement was for farmers to go out and recheck their fields. You may have not seen damage right away, or maybe you saw some and thought, oh, this section of the field is going to be okay. Farmers are finding out that's not always the case. And another thing we talked about with all this replant this late in the game is seed supplies. Guys are obviously seeking out those short day soybean varieties. For now, at least with Pioneer, I can't speak for all the other brands of seed that are out there. Supplies are okay. But some farmers are actually waiting to replant after we get past this heat and we get some moisture. If we don't, they might not replant at all. But so that seed supply situation could change really quickly.
What I thought was interesting, excuse me, Don. What I thought was interesting was the guys we talked to too, I think, and Megan, I think Jeremy mentioned it as well. The damage we saw was on fields that had cover crop or a lot of trash from last year, whereas the conventional till that were black held that heat a little better and survived, which is just kind of backwards from what you normally would think.
No doubt. Another big story this week was JBS, the world of cyber terrorism coming into our food and farm sector this past week. This past Sunday, last Sunday, JBS Worldwide getting impacted with an attack on their IT systems, particularly here in the US, Canada, and in Australia. The recovery was, I think, a lot faster than many anticipated as we went into this situation. JBS was able to isolate this hack, so it really didn't impact their core systems or their backup. So they were able to get back up and running. And yesterday, really, were full speed ahead. All lines were operating all across the world, they said. So that's very positive news. The Russians, according to the FBI behind this particular cyber terrorism, this case, making obviously a big story in the cattle industry in particular.
Yes, so we didn't really talk about it formally last night with the cattlemen I met up with at the North Dakota Stockmen's Association Spring Roundup. But, in casual conversation, that was obviously a big issue in the top of their minds because, you take just everything else that they've been through the past year and a half, 2 black swan events. They finally felt comfortable that, that meat packing sector was recovering for the most part from coronavirus. Those lines were getting back to a pretty normal schedule along with the shifts and the workers. And then, as they described it, this is just a whole nother wrench that you had to throw into the mix. Like you said, Don, thankfully, we actually got back and up online sooner than anybody really anticipated. But, even just driving in the car yesterday, listening to the radio, and, they're already on some major news stations, they're already talking about meat shortages and that sort of thing. And I think it just creates another level of anxiety in the world of beef.
Yeah, not just a couple of black swan events. I think we've had a flock of black swans when it comes to the cattle industry. Kara, you were also on the road. The EPA Administrator was in Bismarck, a rare visit outside of Washington, D.C. for one of the administration folks because of the COVID travel restrictions. Michael Regan, the EPA Administrator, coming to North Dakota. Kara, what was that meeting all about?
Yeah, Don, it was a very interesting meeting yesterday, and one of the first that's happened, at least for us, to attend post-COVID, or at least as we recover from COVID. And I get a sense that a lot of other people attending the meeting were about in the same boat. So everyone was grateful to see each other. Everything was socially distanced, of course, but a lot of interesting topics, the Waters of the United States rule being a big one for agriculture, and also some talks about climate, and then also the pesticide approval process at the EPA. Just briefly on the latter point, but there were 3 ag groups in attendance: North Dakota Farmers Union, North Dakota Farm Bureau, and also the North Dakota Stockmen's Association. All 3 of them reiterated the importance of leaving the WOTUS rule as is. At the same time, EPA Administrator Michael Regan outlined why he wanted to readdress the WOTUS rule. Michael Regan talked about how the Obama administration rule had issues, how the Trump administration's version didn't quite line up with how some other states could implement. So the agency is trying to find now a solution that maybe meets in the middle, or something that would maybe fit the mold for different states. And it was reiterated several times in that discussion that a one-size solution does not fit all. And I don't know if the ag groups are going to get what they want in the sense of the EPA leaving WOTUS rule as it is now by itself, but we'll see how the discussion looks going forward. It sounds like the EPA will actually be back in North Dakota for a listening session once we get a few more people in at EPA to actually make that happen. At least that's what North Dakota Senator Kevin Kramer was telling me yesterday. Red River Farm Network got just a few brief moments with the EPA Administrator. We did get to ask him a little bit on the pesticide approval process. As you all know, if you've been following the dicamba issue, an OIG analysis of the EPA showed that the agency had mishandled the approval of 3 dicamba herbicides. And in response, the EPA planned to implement some actions to ensure the pesticide registration decisions are free from political interference. We don't know exactly what they mean by that and how that impacts not just dicamba, but other products as well. So getting some clarity on what that looks like and any regulation from the EPA moving forward was really, it was key yesterday and will also be key moving forward. So a really good meeting, about 30 in attendance altogether around that table, including lawmakers that were there. It wasn't just Senator Kramer who hosted the event, North Dakota Senator John Hoeven, and then Representative Kelly Armstrong was there, as well as the governor and a few other key people as well. So a really interesting meeting, and we'll see what happens with WOTUS and the issues that the EPA is looking at for agriculture going forward.
Great to have the administrator here in North Dakota. We always appreciate those visits up to the Northern Plains and Upper Midwest. Randy, let's talk markets. Again, a very volatile week. I just looked at yesterday. We started one direction, went the other direction, and ended somewhere in between.
Yeah, that's been the modus operandi here lately. It's weather. It's all about weather. Every 6 hours we get a new weather forecast. Weather models come out, and the market is at the whims of the weather. And we'll keep watching to see when expected rains continue to fall. What happens, it seems like, is we get like take here, for example, yesterday we started the morning off dry in the overnight session with that weather forecast. So we were double-digit gains. We opened the morning double-digit gains at noon or 11 o'clock when that latest weather model came out. It took it added about 2 inches of rain across everywhere in the country over the next 2 weeks, except for maybe California. And then again, so that led us to double-digit losses. And then by the time the markets closed, we had pulled back a little bit. Now again, overnight this morning, we had all that rain in the forecast gone, totally out of it again. So now we're seeing double-digit gains here as we open things up again this morning. We're pulling back here a little bit right now, but like I said, it's just kind of a back and forth, and you got to buckle your seatbelt and hang on here because it's a wild ride.
There's no doubt. We had, of course, we have the acreage report coming out at the end of this month. Next week, a supply demand report. These numbers get pretty critical when we look at where we're sitting as far as inventory.
Yeah, the WASDE report on the 10th, really not expected to be a whole lot because the USDA will continue to use trendline yields and their acreage estimates. The bigger report's going to be that June 30th planted acreage report where we actually get actual planted acres. And right now, everybody's looking at least 6 million acre increase in corn from where they're at right now. So that's kind of where everybody's leaning here right now.
Another big story came out late yesterday. We had the story this morning here on the Red River Farm Network. Ag Country Farm Credit Services, of course, based in Fargo, and Farm Credit Services of North Dakota, based in Minot, are talking merger. The boards of both the organizations have signed a memorandum of understanding to at least explore all of these options. It's a rather lengthy process. They would need to get approval from the regulators, from Agribank, from the Farm Credit Administration, and of course the shareholders would have to vote on this as well. We spoke with Ed Heglin, who is the chairman of the board for Ag Country. At the very earliest, if something like this would happen, it would be January 1st, 2022. But they're looking at, in Ed's words, at two very strong financial organizations coming together. It would diversify their portfolio and increase efficiency. So that's one thing that's in the news. We've been following. You hear more on that during our Agriculture Today broadcast today as well. We have stuff online too. Another big thing happening next week is our North Dakota FFA convention. Kara, it looks like they've got, should be a good group, maybe not attendance as large as we've had some other years, but good to have them back in person as well.
I think maybe about 1,500 FFA members are expected to attend. I know a lot of those FFAers are really eager to be meeting back in person. Last year, due to COVID, they had a virtual event. So this year should be a really good convention just by being together. And it sounds like they're going to tweak a few things with the general sessions inside the field house on NDSU campus, but that event essentially kicks off on Monday. I believe it goes through the 10th, and be sure to follow along here on the Red River Farm Network. We're going to be covering that event, so stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of great speakers. It sounds like the National FFA president will be in North Dakota to address members. So I think there's a lot of excitement there. Our coverage presented by Ag Country Farm Credit Services, Farm Credit Services of Mandan, Farmers Union in North Dakota Farm Bureau, Proseed, and Nutrient Ag Solutions. So stay tuned. We'll bring you updates starting next week here on the Red River Farm Network.
We always enjoy working with the FFA. Of course, it's been a busy week. I think just what we've been talking about here gives you a good example of what you hear on our airwaves on our Red River Farm Network affiliate radio stations each and every day. And of course, you can find those stories online and in our social media platforms as well. On behalf of Randy Coonan, Megan Overby, and Kara Hart, I'm Don Wick. That's our weekly Reporter Roundtable here on the Red River Farm Network.